Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize for my voice. I'm in the middle of COVID. This is my final research design portfolio by Heather Henderson, EDR 801. So basically, the overarching idea for this research design is the fact that 567,000 fewer educators are in the United States in 2022 than before our COVID pandemic, with 55% of teachers saying they're leaving the classroom and 90% saying that burnout is a significant issue. Within burnout, one of the primary causes of the burnout is stress as a common occurrence within the classroom. And the biggest cause of that is, of course, teacher-student relationships, student behaviors, and classroom management, specifically for our newer teachers. This is demonstrating that our teachers coming into the classroom are not quite prepared for what they're seeing. And it surprised me that only 20 to 50% of universities dedicate courses to classroom management, with most of those, with only half of those making it a requirement. So we are literally getting teachers coming into the classroom with very little requirement for classroom management techniques, which is adding to the stress levels, which leads me to our overall problem: an effective short-term instructional methodology that provides meaningful training room and classroom management that translates to lower prevalence of off-task and other negative behaviors while encouraging student-teacher relationships and decreasing teacher perceptions of stress is necessary for the future development and retainment of the teaching force. In order to do the background on this, our literature review, I focused on gamification and how gamification has been used in pre-service teaching. Of course, gamification as an educational tool has been the topic of study for the past a little over a decade now. And what we're finding is that it's got mixed results, but recent studies do indicate that learner engagement and higher performance scores are results of gamification as opposed to traditional learning methods, signaling that gamification is a more effective instructional method. Specifically for pre-service teachers, gamification did impact learner motivation and technology integration. So when they did studies on integrating technology, gamification provided perceptions of increased learning with pre-service teachers. What we are also seeing, however, and within the literature, is the certain deficiency that there is no long-term results provided of gamified learning. So we have the immediate reactions and the immediate increased perceptions of learning, but there are no long-term studies that have been done on the application of this learning and how long is the retention for the information that is provided. So the significance of this particular study comes down to two things. It demonstrates understanding on how the transferability of skills learned through gamification compared to traditional methods, which may provide insight into the long-term sustainability of gamification as an educational model. And it compares the long-term retention skills gained through gamification as compared to traditional methods for the same reason. The purpose of this study is to kind of to evaluate how a gamified unit on classroom management affects participant learning performance and subsequent learning application through monitoring of student behaviors in the classroom, while also evaluating teacher perceptions of stress based on classroom management techniques and student-teacher relationships when compared to traditional course presentation methods. In order to bound my study, I came up with 3 research questions, 2 quantitative and 1 qualitative overarching, with 2 sub-questions underneath that. The first is, what is the difference in student or participant performance scores in first and second year teacher classrooms when gamification of classroom management courseware is used in teacher preparation programs compared to traditional methods in an average suburban secondary school? What is the difference in the number of students off-task behaviors in first and second year classrooms when gamification of classroom management courseware is used in preparation programs compared to traditional methods in an average suburban school? And third, how do first and second year teachers perceive their ability to manage their classrooms after completing a teacher preparation program that utilize gamification in their classroom management coursework, with the 2 sub questions being, what are the perceived impacts of gamification coursework on classroom management styles, and what are the perceived impacts of the gamification coursework on teacher stress levels regarding student-teacher relationships and classroom behaviors? The study variables for this, as the quantitative aspect of the study does include an intervention. The independent variable is that first and second year teachers that had gamification applied to their classroom management coursework, and first and second year teachers that had traditional classroom management network or coursework. And the dependent variable is as performance scores increase, the number of behavior referrals decrease. The performance score increase is the difference between performance scores for a teacher with standard classroom management coursework and teachers with preparation programs use gamification. Similarly, number of behavioral referrals decreases is the difference between the number of referrals to administration for behavioral issues in the classroom between teachers with standard classroom management coursework and teachers with preparation programs that used gamification. Teachers and students have had a chance to improve both performance scores and behavior numbers throughout the course of the study. Overall expectations for this course of study are that first and second year teachers who are taught classroom management using gamification will have a higher learning performance score and lower numbers of student off-task behaviors than peers who are taught using traditional measures. And further, the teachers who actually receive the gamified classroom management will have increased confidence in the classroom, which will lead to stronger student-teacher relationships and a decrease in perceived stress levels. So for the methodology here, we've kind of given you the brief context already. The participants in this study are going to be undergraduate students enrolled in their last course of study in a teacher preparation program at a large established campus. The population of the campus does not actually meet the surrounding demographics, which was a little bit surprising. 45.8% of the students identify as white, 32.76 is black, 7.06 is Hispanic and Latino, and 3.37 were two or more races. The course of study will be on classroom management skill development, and two sections will be created, whereby one section will be the gamified version and one section will be classroom management using traditional methods. We anticipate roughly 25 students in each section per cohort, with a study periodicity of 3 cohorts for a total of 75 participants in each course, or a total of 150 total participants. And all participants will be tracked through the first 2 years of teaching. The study design is basically the classroom participants will attend their course, whether that is the traditional methodology or the gamified course of learning. Once they go through that, they will take pre and post scores to see the level of learning that was inside the course, and then they will be tracked for 2 years afterwards to see how that study or how that gamification course affects their teaching and their perspective of stress, as well as their efficacy in classroom management. The data sources are presented here primarily through pre and post tests for quantification, an off-task behavior observation sheet for question number 2, and then a combination of journals, interviews, and surveys for question number 3. Procedures, we're going to create the study intervention, of course. Then registrars will randomly assign our pre-service teachers into the courses of study. They'll complete the course of study, including the pre and post tests. Then once they are in the degree, or once they've completed the degree program, been hired, they will begin completing weekly off-task student behavior tracking forms, weekly journal reflections. Once a month, they will do a survey on perceptions of stress, and then once a quarter, there will be a follow-up interview by researchers to ensure that the data that we have is what we're looking for. At the conclusion of each school year, the data will be compiled with a trend analysis, and the process would be completed for the second year with a final evaluation following. The biggest ethical considerations for this study is the desire for participants to look good, which may result in skewed results. Also, as this does involve program coursework, there is potential for power imbalances whereby the participants may feel they are required to participate, and that could change the way the participants feel about the study. Further, local permission from the participant's school of employment would be necessary to avoid ethical complications, and keeping the data about the children or the students in the classroom would be the final ethical consideration. The role of the researcher here is as an outsider perspective, according to Merriam and Tisdale, so there's little to no opportunity for the research to bias the participants or create the power bias. However, when they're evaluating data, researchers must be aware of their own particular biases, which may affect the way that the data is presented. For my own personal reflection, my approach is I chose to do a mixed method study because I fully felt that the quantitative and qualitative both left out necessary aspects of the study itself. So the combination of the two was an absolute requirement for me. And then to make sure that all of my study aspects were aligned, I took basically it step by step, and then took the feedback that I had received from the professor during the course of this, and tried to really work in to make sure that everything that I had was a reflection of what I needed it to be, and that everything was in alignment moving forward. And then for my working process, this study is not the one that I'm using for my dissertation, and I really wish that I had had this course prior to writing my dissertation prospectus, because it would have simplified the stress that I went through in developing my actual dissertation. That being said, this does really help me focus on how to go forward, and I'm looking forward to future studies being a much simpler design. And those are my references.